This episode is brought to you by the Thrive Tribe. Check it out at chasingbrighter.com/Thrive Tribe. Welcome to Chasing Brighter, the podcast where we explore how to live midlife with more meaning, joy, and connection. Today's episode, Kelly and I are sitting down with someone very special, our mom.
Yay. Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be here.
We're going to get into her life journey, get some wisdom that she's gathered along the way, how she's seen things change over the years, get a little insights into what it was like raising two beautiful, brilliant, amazing daughters who never were trouble, and really get a lot of her beautiful reflections.
Yeah, you won't want to miss this. This is a great episode hearing about, we talked about what it means to truly thrive as a woman in all seasons of life.
Okay, so I want this to be fun, and I wanted to ask you just a lot of random questions. Maybe Jessie has some other things in mind, because sometimes we don't really prep for these things. But what were you like as a little girl?
I was the perfect child.
That's what
Not
I
really, but
expected to hear.
I know what I've said before, and you guys have heard this, is that I'm the middle of the youngest three in our family. There were 6 in our family. And I just can always remember I liked things to be on an even keel. I didn't like for there to be any arguments or anything that was out of the ordinary. I just want everybody to get along. Now, I didn't always act like that as a child. I always think I had a death wish for my youngest sister, your Aunt Gail.
Yeah.
Because I can remember from being small, I don't remember really not liking her, but I remember doing some awful things.
And you're
How-
3 years older.
Yeah, I was going to ask how
I'm
what is
2.5
the age
years
2.5
older.
years
Okay.
older. Okay.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
familiar with that death wish, aren't we, Jess? Or
I guess so. I feel like I'm the
Mhm.
victim. So you're the one
Yes.
with the death wish.
there are some attempted murders, perhaps.
Yes, if jelly shoes could kill.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Sad
remember the story
meme.
of when I
Yeah.
tried to rock her off the rocking chair.
Oh,
with
yes.
Jess.
Yeah.
You thought it was hysterical.
You were around in the 80s. You remember jelly shoes, which were beautiful, but I guess a weapon that Kelly used to hit me. But going back to you, Mom, do you remember the dinosaurs? Or
No, but I do remember carving my homework in rocks.
what is it, the tablet and a chisel? Do you remember like what you guys did for fun, and you had toys that you liked? Or
I don't remember any specific toys. I do remember a doll that I had. We played outside a lot, and I just remember a lot of make-believe playing.
yeah.
Dad had these stacks of windows. They were huge windows. And I remember we would sit on it like a stagecoach, and my brother Dennis, he'd be running the horses, and we'd be passengers on the stagecoach.
Yeah.
I remember playing like we were horses. We played a lot of ball, and especially when I got a little older, still in elementary school, we had moved, and there was, in the block or 2 blocks we were in, there was a nice group of kids. And I can remember playing baseball practically every day.
Sun up to sundown. And you grew up in, would you describe, is it rural Western Kansas?
Yes, I would say rural Western Kansas.
Yes. Yeah. Don't look at me like I'm crazy. Our listeners don't know. I know where you grew up.
It was a very small town. It was probably 99% German Catholic. And so it was small, and we were able to get around. I grew up with many of my aunts and uncles, many of my first cousins, second cousins. So we were always around a lot of people.
A lot of big families. Your mom was one of 12.
Yes.
And
11.
One of 11, and her siblings all lived in the area.
Most of them did.
Yeah. Do you have, so Kelly and I were also very close to both of our grandmothers, and your mom, our grandma, Ludovici, was able to spend time here in Las Vegas the last few years of her life. So we got to know her. My kids got to know her. Kelly and your kids got to know her. But do you have a memory of your mom that makes you smile?
I'm sure
I
you
have
have
a
a lot of
lot of
them.
memories of mom that make me
Or what do you
smile.
think? What kind of mom do you think she was?
I'm sure there isn't any kid who's grown up and wish they had different parents. Because you think your parents are the only ones that maybe argue or do certain things, excuse me. But mom was always around a lot of her sisters. And so there was always lots of laughing and having fun. Some of my memories have to do with mom as she was older because I truly got to appreciate her a lot more than I did as when I was growing up. Some of the stories are stories that my older siblings have talked about too, because mom could be playful and play jokes on people, but I don't remember her really doing anything to me specifically. But
Maybe
I
she
don't
was
know. I think
broken
we
by the
always
time
had
you
good.
came on.
I
As
know she.
Jessie says, with her number 3 broken, so that would have been
Yeah.
Uncle Dennis.
Oh yes.
I wonder, so this is interesting. So I feel so lucky because when listeners, our grandma had a fall, she was living independently and it scared her. So then she started spending like months at a time with each of her children. So she would come out to Vegas and then to California, almost maybe half the year end up going with Uncle Dennis and whatever. But anyway, so she would be here. So we got to see her a lot. And one of the things I noticed, I was talking to like my clinical supervisor one time and she was like, "You really get joy from your kids." And I noticed like the people who are my really good friends are people who get a lot of joy from their kids. And so I just noticed that with grandma had so many great memories and just really loves kids and got joy from her kids just from a loving way, and hearing her talk about her kids and everything, that's something that I noticed. Do you think her parenting impacted you, and how would you describe the kind of parent you were to Kelly and I?
Sometimes listening to your podcast, I'm not always the best parent. And I'm just
Oh,
kidding. I'm kidding.
to get that dig in.
I always felt, even though there were money issues for when I was growing up, my dad was in the military and he was in the military for 20 years. And when he retired, I was probably in the second grade. And then the Cuban Missile Crisis came up, and then he was called out again and then came back. Then he spent the majority of the rest of his life. He did a lot of construction. But I do remember there always being some money issues, but I don't ever remember having a want for anything. Not that was anything out of the ordinary. I wish I had a new car or wish I had new clothes. We always had clothes. We always had good food. And mom, neither one of them were a great disciplinarian, but I think just like you talked about, by the time you get down to your 5th child, the older kids are already done all the bad things, honestly, because I feel like we were not hard to handle.
Yeah. Yeah. You feel like the older ones
Yeah,
were more wild too.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Mom, I think, but Justin, I feel the same way about growing up, by the way. I don't think we always got what we wanted. You guys made a lot of sacrifices to make things happen. And I think maybe that's what a lot of parenting is about.
Well, but I think you guys got joy from us. I think we played
Oh,
well as a
yes.
family. And I also think you guys were not good disciplinarians.
No. And I grew up with not good disciplinarians, but I really don't remember doing anything very terrible. Probably the worst I ever did was maybe, I think I remember this, but I got a spanking, and I think we were at a neighbor's house. And then an older neighbor was also in that area. And I think we must have said some things to this older neighbor. I don't remember
you got
what I
spanked?
said,
Yeah.
but it must have been something you were probably being mean to him. And then when I got home, I got spanked for that.
Mm.
And so I don't even really remember. It was something along those lines. And then they told my dad. And that's probably the only time I ever remember getting spanked, to be honest. And my mom and dad did spank, but really
But
not
I
very
say
often.
everyone always goes to spanking. And what I say is discipline means to teach. It doesn't mean to punish or corporal punishment, but I feel like people always go to like, how are you disciplined? And it's
Or
are
they
you
did it-
spanked or not spanked?
When I
you
was
know, but
spanked, it was one.
that was in the parenting books back then. Yes.
It was one swat. I know I never did that again.
yeah. You heard it here, folks. Spanking works.
Even you two, I know we probably spanked, but I cannot count on one hand the number of times
I don't know.
that
It's in the
I've gotten
it's in the
spanked.
vault. I locked it away. I don't remember being spanked.
And I do agree not to do your discipline when you're mad because and that's what you
Does that
do.
make
You
any
just
sense?
mad
Right.
and swat your kid, and then I'd be upset and they'd be upset. So
I
don't
want
think it was
to
great.
shift a little bit, right? We have a little bit to your parenting, right? But did you always, so your generation, we've talked before a little bit, like you had two choices, right? You felt like to be a nurse or secretary, right?
Yeah, that I do think that was funny. I didn't know we had a counselor till it was the second semester of my senior year in high school. We had a meeting and the principal was there. And basically, I guess he was the counselor too. And he had us all in there. And it was like we were sitting at tables and we were supposed to decide what it was we were going to be doing. And I'm sorry, I know we talked to our kids about that at an early age, but back then, nobody ever said, what are you going to do when you leave school? Or I don't ever remember that, but we sat down with the principal. And so I'm looking through some information. And basically, I felt like it was either a secretary or a nurse, or I should say a school teacher too.
Oh,
But
that was
so
way broad.
I narrowed my choice down to I either want to be a secretary or a nurse. And basically, the principal said, you should be a nurse. And I'm like, okay, that's what I did.
And I say that because I wonder, like one of the questions, Kelly, you have is about like when she found out she wanted to be a mom. Was that an automatic that you were gonna be a mom? Was that something you wanted to do, or
for
was it
sure.
like you wanted to do it, or you were just like, that's what women do?
No, I wanted to be a mom. And you talk about my mom loving babies. I was one of the babies, so I wasn't around babies, but I always remember loving babies, the whole babies, carrying them around. I loved that.
We
Yeah.
call you the baby whisperer.
So for sure, I knew I wanted to be a mother.
Yes. Yes. And do you remember, again, going back now, you can get a pregnancy kit thing at the Dollar Tree.
I know.
How did you, obviously, like you just
They
missed
do
a
like
period,
$1
or, like,
pregnancy tests.
Yeah.
yes.
Wow.
I don't know how effective those
Way
were.
back then,
Yeah.
it was when the rabbit died. I'm lying, but they used to
it
say
wasn't.
that.
I thought they injected something in the rabbit and the
That's-
rabbit died. You were pregnant. I literally think that came from something.
It did, but
Yeah.
I don't know if they were doing that when I was pregnant. Basically, we were always told you miss a period, but you wait till you miss the second period to go into the doctor's
Okay.
office. And so then they would do blood work and they would be able to.
And you were actively trying to have a baby?
Yes. Yeah, we wanted to be pregnant.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember finding out?
Oh, yeah. And your dad went with me because we both basically knew I was regular as clockwork. And so I missed a period and then missed the second one. And so, yeah, it was exciting.
Yeah.
And I always remember Grandpa, my dad, because he had, I got to count. Did he have 5 granddaughters? He had 5 granddaughters already, no grandsons. And I used to kid him when I remember when I was pregnant and we were at the house and I had mentioned that Tom has a little Indian in him, Native American. And my dad said, I wish you had a little Indian in you. And he was kidding because he wanted me to
Have a
be
baby.
pregnant.
Yeah.
So I don't really remember along those lines or what the actual time was.
Yeah.
But even Dad, he didn't care. He said, as long as your children, everything is okay with them, he didn't care how many granddaughters he had.
Yeah.
But I do believe he had 8 granddaughters before he had a grandson.
Wait, Kelly would have been 6.
That's crazy.
Yeah, 7, 8 before Michael came. Or was
It is a lot of
first?
girls.
Rhett first, yeah.
And it was a lot of girls on the Martin side too. We definitely grew up with a lot of female cousins.
It's
Yeah.
true. And
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
mom's family, there were 2 boys and 9 girls.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah, that's true.
Dad's side, which I guess that didn't carry on, but
Was
he
all
had
boys, yeah.
he had 5.
Except
There were
Olga.
5 boys and a girl. Yeah. So that's crazy.
So,
But
so you have 2 daughters. We're 18 months
beautiful
apart.
baby angels.
What are yes, but I think about what are some stories you have where we embarrassed you?
I know
there
what you're
were-
talking about.
yeah,
You're
there-
talking about me.
there were some. I am going to say,
Asking for a friend.
I'm going to tell you for Kelly, because we were also potty training you at the same time. If you had to go to the bathroom, you would say TT, and so we'd take you to the bathroom. When I brought Jessie home, you learned quite quickly that your way to get attention was to say TT, and I would just stop everything and go take you to the bathroom. Also, then you would start to also be able to say dink for drink, because you learned I was going to stop and pay some attention to you. So I would sit down and nurse Jessie, and I'd have everything right there. I'd have the potty chair. I'd have anything for you to drink. I'd have any snack that you might want. I'd have any toy you might want, so that I had some time to sit down and feed Jessie. So I thought that was funny. You were 18 months old.
Yeah.
Now all of a
And
sudden,
brilliant, obviously, very young.
you, but no, I can remember a few embarrassing things. I do remember I had a hysterectomy at the age of 30. So Jessica would have been, I don't feel like she was even 5, but she had to be somewhere 4 or 5. And she would just tell that to random people, like we'd be talking, or maybe they'd ask about kids. Mom couldn't have any more kids because she had her stomach cut out. That
It's transparency. I believe.
It was
Yeah.
before TMI was TMI.
Yes. And then my need to try to explain, so they all end up getting the whole 9 yards of the story. But no, Kelly, the very first time I realized that you would be embarrassed was when we went to your preschool graduation, and you heard that many times. They had been practicing for this preschool graduation and singing and everything. And as they walked out, and it was just in a little small room, you walked out and saw all those people, and I could just tell your whole demeanor changed. And you looked at the teacher and you said, "I'm not doing nothing." And you sat down. And you didn't do anything. But I realized that's you weren't expecting that.
Like I was freaking out. Yeah.
Yes. And I remember singing happy birthday to you there at preschool. And you just, everything was all fun and games until everybody stopped and we were looking at you and saying happy birthday. It's like your whole
I do like to
facade
blend in a
changed.
little.
No.
I don't like to be looked at.
But
Beckett has
I
that
agree, I am
personality trait,
too.
I think.
I do too. I may not
I
seem
know
like
it's
it
hard
now, but I never, I just wanted to be the straight and narrow. I did not want to be singled out in any way.
If you're having trouble coming up with examples of when Jessie might have embarrassed you, I have a couple
Oh,
too. If
God.
you,
Yes, I do. Probably to me, the most embarrassing, and I don't know if that's what you were thinking of, but we were living in Nebraska and I went to the Quick Trip. Was that one of those moments?
I don't remember. I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, tell us the story.
The story is I went into the Quick Trip and I think I got a 12-pack of beer and I put it up on the counter, and Jessica looked right up at me and said, "Mom, are you going to go home and get drunk again tonight?" I was excited because you had a stomach. And I think I slithered out of the Quick Trip and probably never showed my face in there again.
I remember I thought that if you drank alcohol, you were drunk. You know what I mean? I didn't realize drunk was like a thing. I just thought if you drank, you were drunk, but whatever.
But yeah, I don't even
Yes,
think
or
I could
color.
say anything to that. Of course, in the car, I wanted to scare her within an inch of her life. And I said, Jessica, if you say that to people, do you know someone can come to the house and take you away from us? Yeah, I don't know that it phased her.
I think it is funny. Like I always say, my kids make me a liar. Like whatever they do at home, they don't do in public, and vice versa. So it's like you never know what these kids are gonna
Yeah.
do in public.
What's your funnest like memory of a trip we took, or like a family
A
trip,
fun one,
something?
or one
or
of
a
them
tragic
is
one?
one of them
Our brother.
is our we called it the trip from hell when we went up to Nebraska and over to South Dakota and then over to Colorado and back. And
Who
we had
calls
a
that? The
great
adults called it
time.
the trip from
No,
hell?
we did because there were just some instances.
Did we have 3 minivans? It was a
It was
caravan.
two. It was two. There were 2 minivans, and it was
Your
actually
sister and sisters,
yeah, 2 of my sisters.
and our cousins.
It could have been 3 because wasn't Aunt Gail there? Because she had Maria and Emily.
They drove with us, I think.
Oh, Ian was
maybe there
with
were
us.
3,
That's
yeah.
right.
That was
Yeah.
when they came out with the big.
Econo van.
But what was the drink? The big
Oh.
slurp or the big
Oh,
A
or the-
gulp?
big
Yeah,
gulp?
or
That's
okay,
what it
the
was.
gulp, yeah.
And Ian wanted one so bad when Dad finally stopped and we went somewhere and he got the big gulp. Going through traffic downtown Denver on a Friday, and all of a sudden Ian has to go pee. So then everybody started laughing because Tom was like, we're going to start calling that the big P from now on.
Yeah.
And we were making him laugh. And anyway, he did make it on time.
Our dad drove the giant van with all the like pre-teens and
Yes.
teens, and then you were with your sisters. And then I don't know what would inspire adults to go on a multi-state trip in multiple vans with
With
a
teens.
group of children, because you were outnumbered with children
Yeah.
for sure.
And one of my memories of that is when we went to Mount Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore.
Yes. And I had been there as a child, but they had this long walkway that was built with wood, and then you go up some steps, and then you go on another landing and you look up and see Mount Rushmore. I was really excited about it. How many kids were there?
A lot.
All of
At
you
least
kids,
10.
6.
Yeah.
And then the adults, we're all walking back behind you. You guys were ahead of us, and pretty soon you all come running back and say, all right, we saw it. What's next?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're going to get back up there and you're going to look at those bugs and you're going to learn something about it. Because you just went up there. I know
Oh
you
my
were like,
gosh. Yeah,
it was
I
like,
can
okay,
imagine.
Claire.
Okay, look, kids, Big Ben.
Yep,
Yeah,
okay.
there it is. All right.
Yeah. I think, or you tell me, okay, do you think that motherhood has changed since you raised us? And what best piece of advice do you have for moms today?
Oh, that's a big question. Yes, it has changed. And it had even changed from when I was a mother, because my mom, for the most part, did not work while she raised her family. But when I was younger, for the most part, when I grew up, mothers did not work. But yes, I knew there were mothers that did work, not very many. And mom worked when I was probably in the 4th grade, maybe, when mom started to work. And she worked off and on then through my high school. But I think me as a parent, it was much more common for a woman to have a career and have a family. And so the majority of my friends did work and they raised their family. And so that was probably the biggest difference. But it is one of the things I do always remember, that I always wished I could have been home all the time for you guys. And when I think about it, I was there most of the time. But that my thought about having to work, that I always wished I didn't have to work while you were growing up. But I was home especially when you were younger. So I was lucky that I did do that. And for now, I think it's even both parents are
Harder.
working. I think it's unusual to see one or the other parent that stays home with the kids. It's, I don't know if it's us wanting to have all the things we want to have, because I do believe it can be done, but it is harder.
But at the 45 years ago, a house cost as much as a car. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah,
think
for
I do
sure.
think like it's more, it's like the cost of living
Right.
isn't balancing out necessarily with wages, and so I think we need a lot of families need to have dual income,
Yes.
Yeah.
even
That's a good
just not
point.
even to have extra
Right.
things. Like I was home for about 5 years, and in my mind, I thought that at-home mothers were like this luxurious mother. It was a family that had a lot of money, but actually, my friends who are at-home moms, we all were like sacrificing. Like it was a sacrifice and a choice that we
Yeah.
had made at the time. It wasn't like, oh, my
Yes.
husband makes all this money, so I'm just going to luxuriate at home. It was like, no, we're cutting coupons and on a budget because whatever. But anyway, so
Yeah. That's a
do
good
you
point. Yeah.
think, so with the working component or whatever, is that what advice do you have, or what do you feel like you did to try to make it seem like you were more present, or what advice do you have for other moms?
I just think you do need to be there for your kids. If you're working, you can maybe make the time you have with the kids. And it doesn't always have to be going out somewhere, but play games as a family. When you do things, take your kids with you. I do remember doing that a lot. You always, even when you were younger and dad was on the farm, he would have one or both of you a lot, and it helped me out. I'd maybe be home getting dinner together, but I didn't have an issue with that. There was always, you guys, I feel like we were always together. And when I really remember it most, if you remember when we moved to Nebraska, because we didn't know anybody. And I feel like we just did everything together. And I do think it brought us closer as a family.
Yeah.
Did we all get along and sing Kumbaya all the time? No, but it did make us closer. I just remember a lot of we'd go out for dinner, we'd go to the movies. And I can remember when I was working on the weekend, I was working with hospice. I remember dad taking you to go see, I think you guys saw Ghostbusters with your dad.
We saw a lot of movies
We
with
went
Dad.
and
to
you
the
saw
arcade with dad and played skee ball, and
Yes.
we got that unicorn.
Oh, the unicorn.
That's what I remember dad taking us to the arcade a lot.
Dad took us to the arcade a lot. Yes.
Yeah. And I was going to say, so do you say this? Because I don't know if I'm taking Kelly's phrase or if I made this up myself, but I call it forced family fun time. Or do you say that? It's forced family fun
I
time.
call it that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay. And I feel like we get that from, I do think that you can intentionally raise your kids that way. Like I had a friend who I think she had 2 or 3 sisters, and they were like, bam, bam, bam. They all were like 12 months apart. And she was like, we all hate each other. And so as adults, like very much they were not close. And I think just because you're close in age doesn't mean that your kids are close. I think you have to intentionally,
Same with even
like,
being
raise
spaced
your
apart,
kids.
honestly.
Yeah.
right?
And yeah, like my kids are spaced apart, but it's like that we intentionally have forced family fun time, even with, you know what I'm saying, with like devices and internet, all that stuff. It's like, no, we're watching a movie together. And my middle child, the Y kid, like, why we're watching a movie? You're getting over here and we're picking, you're going to have the happiest time. This is what we're doing. And that probably came from our childhood of our own forced family fun time. Yeah.
And I know one of the things you asked me that's different now for mothers. And I just think I call it an electronic age.
Yeah.
Because the kids they can sit with their phone and they don't need anybody else.
Yeah.
I never hear any of them when they're on the phone like that say, I'm bored.
Yeah.
Where I can remember you guys saying, I'm bored, we don't have anything to do. And so now that's taken a twist, because now you have to find things that you can draw your kids away from their devices.
Yeah. So be like, but if it's forced, I don't offer an alternative that's even more fun.
Yeah.
But it's like wholesome.
No, I
mean, our
agree with that.
kids, Kelly and I's kids both like board games.
There has to
Like
be
the first night Wes stayed with us, like we all played a game. Like I
Yeah.
think we all like board games. And so then your kids end up
If you
having
force them to
fun.
do it, they'll do it
Yeah,
now.
you
Yeah.
start forcing them very young. They And they don't know they have a choice. I had so much fun, Mom. Did you have a good time on the podcast?
Oh, I did. I'm going to think of all kinds of things I could have
know.
said
I know.
after the fact.
This is where what we have learned, Mom, is you have to give yourself grace. And you
Yeah.
got to just know that you're doing the best you can, because that
Yes,
is the one thing
explicit.
that you always told me growing up, that like I always was beating myself up. And thank you for being here. If you wouldn't have done such a great job raising us, we
Yeah.
wouldn't have had this podcast.
Yeah, we wouldn't be
I-
in the top 5% of the world in podcasts.
And
you
that's
know?
so true.
If we didn't spend half of our life hating each other, we wouldn't
Yeah.
have had this.
Yeah, I love
Or
go
trying to
ahead,
kill each
you're
other.
saying.
And I was just going to say that I am totally very proud that you both have gotten together to do this. I just think it's awesome.
Thank you.
We're
That
having
is
a lot of
also-
fun.
Yeah, another thing that we got a lot of was a lot of praise growing up. So Kelly and I also need a lot of praise because that's what we've grown accustomed to. I hope that you guys have enjoyed our mom stories and that it's touched your heart in some ways as much as it did ours.
Mom, thank you for your wisdom. And this was really fun, just reflecting on how it was raising us and hearing about your family. Hopefully everybody else enjoyed our conversation as well. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening today. Don't forget to subscribe so you can hear our latest episodes as soon as they drop.
If you loved today's episode, share with a friend. Find us on Instagram, Facebook at Chasing Brighter, or check out our blog at chasingbrighter.com and follow us. If you want to know more about Kelly and I, read our blogs, find more tips, tools, and resources, check that out at chasingbrighter.com. Thanks. Remember, your best life is just a listen away.